To solve the equation negative 3y plus 4x is equal to 12, you could solve the equation for y and create a table of values, but that looks like it might take too much time. Instead, I'm going to find the x and y intercepts, graph those, and draw the line going between them. Let's start with let's say the y-intercept. If you want to find the y-intercept, you let x equals 0 within your equation and solve for y. So your equation becomes negative 3y plus 4 times 0 is equal to 12. This is typically a very simple equation because basically the part with the x goes away. You have negative 3y is equal to 12. Dividing both sides by negative 3 gives you y is equal to negative 4. So we just found a point. That point is 0 for x and negative 4 for y. So I'll plot that right here. If I get one more point, I can simply graph the equation. So let's find the x-intercept. And it's very similar. To find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0 within your equation and solve for x. So that is negative 3 times 0 plus 4x is 12. Again, the part with the y goes away. You're left with 4x is equal to 12, and after dividing both sides by 4, you get x is equal to 3. So this time, we put 0 in place of y and got 3 for x. So that's a very different point, but that's located right here. And now that I have 2 points, I can simply draw the line that goes between them. So I guess I'll do that in blue, and get something that looks like this. So it's a pretty quick way to graph a line if it isn't solved for y. You can just plug in a couple of values for x and then y. Okay, I also want to focus on the slope formula, which I put down here. So what is the slope of this line? That was the last part of this question. So to determine the slope, what we talked about last class, you can define it as the rise over the run. So starting with this point here, the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the run is 1, 2, 3. So I know the slope of this line is positive 4/3. So I'll put that here. There is another way to get the slope of the line without counting from one point on the graph to another point, and it's by using this thing here. So what I'm going to do is use these 2 points and this equation to determine that the slope of the line is also 4/3. So let's try that out. Okay, so in my formula, I need to choose x1, y1, and x2, y2. This is our way of saying to figure out slope, you need 2 different points. And I think what I'll do is let x1, y1 be, let's say 0, negative 4, and x2, y2, I'll let that be 3, 0. So here's x1 and y1, here's x2 and y2. I'm going to take that information and put it into this equation. So let's compute that. The slope m is equal to, it's going to be y2 minus y1, so that's 0 minus a negative 4, divided by, okay, now it's going to be x2 minus x1, which is 3 minus 0. And if I simplify this, the slope is, okay, in the numerator, 0 minus a minus becomes positive, and we're left with 4. And in the denominator, 3 minus 0 is simply equal to 3. And this formula matches up with what we figured out off of the picture of this graph. So this formula is convenient if you want to figure out the slope between any 2 given points. And let's try that in question 2. Okay, what we're going to do is plot these 2 points, and I want to figure out the slope of the line between them. So let's start with this one here, negative 2, negative 8. Okay, negative 2, and then negative 8 is down here. Okay, my other point is 2, 4, so that's over 2, up 4, right there. And the slope between these 2 points is the rise over the run, which you could simply count just by using this grid. But again, I want to try using this formula. I'm going to let this be x1, y1, and this be x2, y2. Maybe I'll write that below here. So let this be x1, y1, and this will be my x2, y2. The formula of the slope is, okay, it's going to be y2 minus y1, that's 4 minus a negative 8. And I'm going to divide by x2 minus x1, which is 2 minus a negative 2. So try that. 2 minus negative 2. And if I simplify this, okay, 4 minus minus 8 is really 4 plus 8. 2 minus minus 2 is really 2 plus 2, that's 4. This is 12 over 4, or actually just positive 3 over 1, or you could just say 3. So here we figured out the slope. The slope is 3. But what is the equation that goes through this line? Like, I know there's some formula, there's something that goes between these 2 points. What is it? So that's going to be new in this example, so let's try that. The formula for the equation of the line is y is equal to m, the slope, times x plus b, the y-intercept. To figure out the equation of the line, I just need to know the slope and the y-intercept. And actually, we just figured out the slope, which means I could put 3 right here. The only other thing I'd need to figure out would be b. So let's plug that in. Y is equal to 3x plus b. The last thing to do for this question is solve for b. How can you do that? If you go back to this part of the question, I gave you 2 points. You can use either one of these points to solve for b. For example, I'm going to use 2 comma 4. Let me put that below here. 2 represents an x, and 4 represents a y. I can put this 2 in place of this x, this 4 in place of this y, and the only thing I won't know is b, and that means I can solve for it. So let's do that within this equation. Okay, so I'll put 4 in place of y, 2 in place of x, and the only thing I do not know is b. I can solve for it. Let's see, 2 times 3 is 6. I will subtract 6 from both sides. I'm noticing that I put a 6 instead of a b. And after I subtract 6 from both sides, I get negative 2 is equal to b. Finding the equation of the line is a 2-step process. Figure out the slope, figure out the y-intercept. If you know those 2 things, you get the equation of your line, which in this case is 3x minus 2. So if you graph that thing, it should contain these 2 points here. And that looks good. Like, the y-intercept looks like it will be about at negative 2 if I am careful when I graph this. So let me sketch this on here. Okay, so my line should look something like this. Again, if I had like a ruler, maybe it would come out better, but I believe that this is in fact the equation that would give us this line, definitely containing these 2 points. For the last 3 questions, I'm not looking to graph the line, but actually I just want to find the equation of the line between the 2 given points in each question. So that is, I want you to find y is equal to mx plus b. And if you think of this as a 2-step process, the first step is going to be find the slope, so find m. The second step will be to find the y-intercept, b. And then once we have those 2 things, we'll have our equation. So let's look at problem 3. So we have 2 points, and the formula for slope, maybe I'll put that up here as well. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to call this first point, let's say x1, y1, and this point x2, y2, and plug it into the formula to figure out what the slope is equal to. The slope is equal to, okay, y2 minus y1. That's negative 3 minus 1 divided by x2 minus x1, which is 5 minus 3. If I simplify this, I get negative 4 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator, and this means my slope is negative 2. So I'm halfway there for this question. My equation should be y is equal to negative 2x, but the only thing I don't know is the y-intercept b. And this is where you can use either one of these points to solve for b. I'm going to choose 3, 1 just because there's no negatives in it. You could use this point too, and it will also work. But I'm going to choose the point 3, 1. That is, I'm saying 3 is x and y is 1. If I put that into my equation, I get 1 is equal to negative 2 times 3 plus b. So 1 is equal to negative 6 plus b. Here I will add 6 to both sides of my equation, continue my work over here, and I get 7 is equal to b. So I've really done my two-step process. My equation is y is equal to, okay, negative 2 was the slope, and 7 was the y-intercept. Let's try that again in question 4. Okay, my 2 points are 6, 8, and negative 4, 3. Try to be a little bit more efficient about it this time, but I'll call this x1, y1. I'll call this other one x2, y2. Doesn't matter if you reverse the order. But first, if I find the slope, that's going to be y2 minus y1. That's 3 minus 8 divided by, okay, that's negative 4 minus 6. Negative 4 minus 6 is x2 minus x1. And if I simplify this, okay, I get negative 5 in the numerator and negative 10 in the denominator. And the negatives cancel, 5 goes into 10 2 times. You can use 1/2 as a slope. Using a fraction is actually nice. It tells you how far up and down, left and right you move. It's completely okay to use a decimal as well, but for this problem, I'm going to choose to use the fraction. Okay, my equation must look like y is equal to 1/2 x, and the only thing I don't know is b. I'm now going to choose one of the points to solve for b, and my choice is going to be to use, I'm going to use 6, 8. Again, that means when x is 6, y is equal to 8, I'm going to plug that into my equation. 8 for y is equal to 1/2 of 6 plus b. All right, if I multiply 1/2 and 6, that gives me 3. So 8 is equal to 3 plus b. And if I subtract 3 from both sides, I'll continue my work up here, and I get 5 is equal to b. And it's at this point that I actually have my equation. My equation is y is equal to 1/2 of x plus 5. Okay, last one here. So for these 2 points, let's see. I'll do, again, x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to figure out my slope. All right, y2 minus y1 is negative 5 minus a negative 5. All right, so negative 5 minus a negative 5 all over, okay, x2 minus x1 is 6 minus a negative 2. Okay, the numerator is negative 5. Well, it's going to be negative 5 plus 5. Denominator is going to be 6 plus 2. So this is equal to 0 over 8. And actually, if you divide 8 into 0, you actually just get 0. That's different. That's a little strange for our equation, but that means y is equal to 0x plus b, which is the y-intercept. And technically, you don't even need to write this term. I mean, 0 times anything is 0, and you just have y is equal to b. I'm actually going to leave this within the equation just because in the previous 2 problems, we put something in place of an x and then solve for a y. So I'd kind of like to have an x in the equation just to see what this looks like. So again, I think I'm going to choose, maybe I'll choose negative 2, negative 5. Again, negative 2 is the x and y is negative 5. If I put all this information into my equation, I get negative 5 is equal to 0 times negative 2 plus b. I mean, it works out, but you get negative 5 is equal to 0 plus b. You don't need to write the 0, and you have that b is equal to negative 5. This means we have our equation. y is equal to 0x minus 5. Now, typically you probably wouldn't write that 0x in there. It's kind of nice in the equation because it tells you something about the slope. I think it'd be more customary just to put y is equal to negative 5. So what does this mean? If your slope is 0, before we saw if you have a positive slope, the line increases. If you have a negative slope, the line is decreasing. A slope of 0 means your line is horizontal. If you go back to these points ahead of time, okay, I think I knew that was going to happen. The y value is the same for these 2 points, which means you're not moving up or down. If you ever make this observation, instead of going through this enormous process, you could actually just jump down to here and say, well, if y is the same, negative 5, in both points, that's going to be my answer. Y is always equal to negative 5. Either way you go about it, you will get to the correct answer, and that is it for this problem.